Hello people, welcome back to Everywhere Tools. Today I've got myself a door, I've got myself some hinges, and I'm going to show you how to chop these hinges into that door the traditional way with hammer and chisel. So I've got my tools, I've got my tea, let's go. So before we get into the chopping, just explain a couple of things here. So I've got myself a hollow door, which I've already planed down and prepared to fit in the opening. So what I normally do is, when I've worked out the side that's going to be hung, I normally just put a H in the corner there, so I know that that is the hanging side. If the door's been painted, then I normally just do it with a pencil. If it's going to be a hardwood door, and then I'll just put a bit of tape or something on that part there, so I know that this side is going to be the hanging side of the door. So all my working is going to be from this side, and also I know that that is the top. Just one other thing to note on these hollow doors is that there is a lock block on one side. So you need to look at the top of the door and you'll see that lock mark on the door, and you'll know that this hollow door has got a solid piece of wood round about the middle where you'll be putting your handles. So that is one thing that you need to know, so that you don't make a mistake of putting it on the other side. Just one other thing that I normally do when I hang doors is I will just make myself up a simple door block out of any scrap of wood. So you cut a slot wider than the door, and then you just cut the end off for a wedge, and then you wedge the door in there, and that will save you a lot of hassle trying to prop the door up. It's all in there securely. Next then, we know this is the top of the door, so what I will do is I will mark down 6 inches from the top and put a little pencil mark. Then I will mark 9 inches from the bottom, which is there, and put a little pencil mark. Then get my square, and I will square this line up here with a sharp pencil. You've got to make sure you've got a really sharp pencil for this, and I will mark that across there. So you might be thinking, why is it 6 coming down and 9 coming up? Well, that is just the way that it's done, but it is in fact that somebody worked out that when you're standing looking at a door, because you are higher up, when that's 9 inches up from the bottom, it looks like it is the same as the top. So I don't know if you've ever looked at the door, the bottom hinge and the top hinge. It actually looks like it's the same distance apart, but it's not. It's 9 inches, but because you are taller, it looks like it's the same. Who would have thought that? So what I'm going to do next is, now I've put those 2 marks on, normally I'm just going to put a little cross on the inside of those 2 marks, just because a lot of the time when you're on site, you start marking something out, and then somebody will call you away, like the plumber will say, can you come and have a look at something for me? So you walk away and you do whatever you're going to do, and then you come back to setting out the door, and a lot of the time you're still thinking about the question that the plumber's just asked you, and it's quite easy to get distracted from what you're doing. So normally I just put a mark, an X on the inside of each mark, just so I know that the hinge that I'm putting on is going to go on the inside of that mark, just so that I know. And also, because I've got the H on the end of this door as well, I know that that is going to be the head, and I know that that's going to be my marks. So what I do next is I just get the hinge. Actually, I'm just going to change camera angle. What I'm going to do next then is I'm just going to get my hinge, and I'm just going to butt it right up against the knuckle of the hinge onto the door. That's my 9 inches from the bottom. There's my pencil mark. I'm going to put it on that pencil mark and just very lightly mark around this hinge all the way around, making sure I've got a really sharp pencil. Then I'm just going to do the same with the top. Just mark it around. And then next, what I'm going to do is get my marking gauge, and I'm going to set this up onto that pencil mark. You want to make sure that you've got a sharp tip on your marking gauge as well. And then simply I'm just going to score that with my marking gauge, not going too deep though, because we don't want it to spread the line by going too deep. And I'll just do the same with the top. So that's the top hinge done as well. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to set the depth of the hinge. So I'm just going to get my hinge against my marking gauge and just bring this pin up to the thickness of the hinge and do that up, whilst trying to show you in the camera at the same time, which is a bit tricky. So that is the thickness of the hinge. So we're going to do it flush, because if you notice when you put these hinges together, they don't fit flush all the way up. They're not touching. There's a gap by the knuckle, and that is going to be, that's sort of going to determine your gap around your door when your door's closed. So that's probably about right for an internal door. So I'm going to keep this hinge flush with the door. And what we do then is we just mark this on the side of the door. Now with these hollow doors, they've got a really hard pressed sort of, what do you call it, hardboard finish. So we just want to score that a little bit so that we know the depth that we're going to do it to. We do the same with the top. So that's all our marking out done. So this is the bottom, so we've come up 9 inches. We've marked out our hinge. We've got the marking gauge, and we've scored a line here, and we've scored a line for the thickness of our hinge, and we've done the same with the top. So that's all the marking out we're going to do. I realise that carpenters have a different way of doing things. This is the way that I've been taught. You can score that with a Stanley knife if you want, and up each side with a Stanley knife. Yeah, people have different ways of marking them out. But if you've got your own way, then that's great, if it works for you. If you don't have a way of doing it and you're wanting to learn, then hopefully these tips will help you out. So that's all the marking out done. The next part is chopping them out. Next we come on to the most important part then, which is chopping out for the hinge. And this is only going to work properly if you've got yourself a sharp chisel. If you're just going to go to the garage and get an old chisel out that you've been opening paint pots with and stirring paint with, that is not going to work. You need to get yourself a sharp chisel that is going to cut into the timber and not just bruise its way through. So what I do first for my first cut is I just bring the chisel in like 2 or 3 mil in from my pencil mark, and then I'll just hit it like that. And also I will do the same on the other end, like so. And also I'll do the same across the back, just leaving it in from that pencil mark. And the reason that I do that It's because although your chisel may be sharp, what can happen is when you chop your chisel through the timber, the timber can sort of spread. And what happens if you do it against your pencil mark, you can have the tendency for the pencil mark to spread as well. Because although your chisel is cutting, it will spread the grain at the same time. So by coming in from the pencil mark a bit, it will spread it, but we're still nowhere near our pencil mark. So hopefully when everything's cleared out, we will do our last chop along our line, and it will keep it to that line. So once I've done that, I'll just work my way along. It doesn't matter if you don't get your chops down to the depth on the where the hinge is going. You can do this a couple of times, but you should get to feel how deep you need to go. Also, you may have noticed that I've got a brand new chisel here. You might be thinking, oh, has he ever done this before? He's got himself a new set of chisels. I've just literally purchased these because my first set that I've had for 29 years has kind of given up, so I've got myself a new set. But yeah, it does feel a bit weird actually, to be honest. It takes a bit getting used to. So then what we're going to do, we'll come onto this edge here, and because this is hardboard, we're just going to try and chop that first bit with our hammer. It's really tough to get through, like so, and then we're just going to pair the rest with our chisel, which is nice and sharp. Just pair that through, supporting it with this hand behind the door, putting our thumb on top so that it's not going to slip all the way through the door. Nice and controlled. And so when I'm happy that we're nice and flat and we're at the depth that we want to be, what I do next is I will go back round and I'll just chop this last piece on this pencil line. So I'm just going to leave the pencil line on, just so that we're in the inside of that pencil line. Same with this one, just leave the line on, and the same with the back. It will fit into that groove actually that we've just done with our marking gauge, and we just tap that, and I don't know if you can see that the waste material just falls forward, so that we know that we're not going backwards on our pencil line, but the waste material falls forwards from that line. So hopefully afterwards it should be nice and tight. We'll just clear that out like so. And there we have it chopped in. Let's just get our hinge then and see if this fits or not. So just another thing about these hinges, well, any hinge really, you'll notice that this hinge has got 3 knuckles on one side, 2 knuckles on the other side, and there is actually a correct way of putting a hinge on a door, believe it or not. So the way I've been taught is, look, the side that's got the 3 knuckles on goes against your door frame, and the side with 2 knuckles goes against the door. So I was always taught by my lecturer that if you can remember most to the post, as in the most knuckles to the post or the frame, then that's the way you do it. And the theory is that if this side is your frame with the 3 knuckles on, then this is kind of the anchor. So your hinge is anchored against the frame and your door moves on those 2 knuckles, which is the part that moves, and the anchor, which is the part on the frame, stays still. which has got the most knuckles on it. That's the theory, that's just the way it is, that's the way I've been taught. And yeah, so we're just going to put our hinge in then, the right way around. 2 to the door, most to the post, and you can see that that will just fit in there lovely. And the next thing I'll do is, if you've got a drill with a center punch in it, then you can just drill it straight in. If you don't have one of those, you can mark your hinge with your pencil, mark the holes with your pencil. You can take that off, and then you can get your pilot drill and you will drill these holes for your screws, which we will do next. So I'm just going to get my drill then and just hold that in the center of my pencil mark, and we're just going to drill a small pilot hole for our screws. It doesn't have to be that deep on these doors because it's just softwood, but it just gives it a center for the screw to go in. Incidentally, when I'm doing doors, internal doors, I always use my 12 volt, or this one, 10.8 volt pistol set. I don't think you need a big 18 volt thing for that. So I always use my little 12 volt just because it's a lot easier. You can have a bit more control over it. I use my 18 volt drill to do the locks with, the latches with, and the same as screwing it up as well. I would just get my little 12 volt drill just to put the screws in. So we just do that to finish. So you can feel that you've got a bit more control over it. You can feel when the screws bite in, so that you won't over tighten the screw. And there we have it. One hinge on the door. I'm going to do the same down the other end, and that will be it. So I hope you found today's clip helpful. If you haven't chopped any hinges into a door before and you don't have a set way of doing it, hopefully these tips will have helped you. And also, as I've said before in my previous videos, that I really believe that it's important to keep up with the hand skills and you know, learn how to use hand skills like hammer and chiseling. Like a lot of things today, you know, it's all power tools and using routers and that. Which, by the way, I do use routers. If I've got a load of doors to do, I will route my hinges out. But also, you know, it is really good to practice hand skills. So I'd encourage you to do that if you're just starting out. It's good using the router, but yeah, make sure you practice your hand skills because it's really helpful for you. Yeah, and you know, that's what traditional carpentry is all about. So I hope you found that good today, and let me know what you think, and be sure to look out for some more videos on Everywhere Tools. Take care.